Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. Now in today's video, as you can see by the wonderful new setup that we have here, we're going to be taking a look at another operating system on the famous $5 Windows 98 PC. Now as I always say at the very start of these videos, this is basically a staple of this channel. I've done a lot of videos on this computer, but in today's video, as you can probably tell from the title, we're going to actually be doing something that I've been wanting to do for a while. And that is installing OS 2, IBM OS 2 on this computer. OS 2 is something that I've kind of always wanted to cover on this channel. I've not really done any videos on it. I think I've briefly mentioned it here and there. But OS 2, if you're not aware, to give you a very tiny, like bite-sized version of the full history, it was an operating system that was jointly developed by Microsoft and IBM in the mid to late 80s, and eventually Microsoft kind of split off and basically gave the full development duties over to IBM. Microsoft went to focus on Windows because Windows ended up being a lot more successful than OS 2, as we all know. And so OS 2 actually was a bit of a competitor to Windows, even though it was made partially by Microsoft in the early days. So it's a very complex history that deserves its own video, which if you guys want to see that, I could possibly do that sometime in the near future. But today we're going to be focusing on installing one of the last versions of OS 2, which is Warp 4. So we're going to go ahead. I have the 4 pieces of installation media that we need, which is 1 CD and 3 floppy diskettes. Now OS 2, this version originally, and from what I could tell by the files on this CD, originally came on like 40 floppy diskettes, but then they made a CD version, which all those 40 diskettes now fit on this one CD. I've been trying to actually track down a floppy disk version of OS 2 to kind of do another floppy disk installation marathon like we did with both Windows 95 and Office 97 on this computer, but we'll just have to save that for another day. But we're going to start off by putting in the OS 2 install diskette into this computer's floppy disk drive, and we're going to turn it on. And I'm going to go ahead and adjust the camera here and give you guys a better view of the monitor. So it's reading off of the floppy drive, the activity light is on, and there we go. Oh yeah, now it's definitely reading files from that disk. So see up there at the very top, it just says OS 2. All right, check that out. So we've got big blue giant IBM logo, OS 2 Warp version 4 installation, copyright 1987, 1996. Remove the diskette and insert OS 2 diskette number 1, which I have right here. So we're going to remove the installation diskette. We're going to put in OS 2 disk number 1. It's going to ask for the CD at some point, so we're just waiting for it to load the setup wizard here. It didn't ask for the CD. I wonder if we're supposed to have the disk in the drive. It didn't ask for it. But the activity light on the floppy drive is solid green right now. Let me go ahead and pan over. You guys can probably see. So yeah, there we go. So all right guys, well, believe it or not, we've run into a couple of issues. Basically what was happening is the installer wasn't loading successfully. It was basically the system was hanging on that OS 2 like wallpaper screen. And I did some research and kind of found out that OS 2 Warp 4 really only supports hard drives like up to 8 gigabytes. So this hard drive in here is like an 80 gig hard drive. So I'm thinking it was probably something with like the hardware. I had read some comments of people saying that if you try it on a system with too fast of a CPU, it might cause some issues, which this computer is I think way succeeds the recommended system requirements for this. So I actually went ahead and downloaded OS 2 Warp version 4.5.2, which is the last release by IBM, which apparently has a lot of bug fixes and should allow us to actually install it. And for bonus points, well, I guess not bonus points if you like floppy diskettes. It's not on any floppy diskettes. There's only 2 CD images. One of them is the boot image, and the other one is the actual installation. So with that being said, I am now going to put in the OS 2 4.5.2 boot image into the drive, and we're going to restart the system here and boot it from the CD, and hopefully we should be able to get a lot farther than we did. It always seems like nothing ever works the first time. That's just kind of a theme with these videos. It's like nothing ever works the first time. You always gotta, like, you know, we always have to change something. So this already looks a lot different. It says OS2 warp at the bottom, internal revision 14.086_W4. Okay, so this is again this issue with this monitor, like it's kind of off the screen. So it says something created, 1 LVM compatibility, volume system must be restarted so the volumes can be recognized during system installation. Remove the diskette from drive A, which there's no diskette in the drive A. Insert the installation diskette into drive A. We don't have an installation diskette. And then press and hold the Control-Delete keys to reboot. So I assume it's talking about the boot CD that's like already in the drive, because there's literally nothing in, I mean, there's nothing in the floppy drive right now. I could use this installed diskette, but this is from the older version. So, and this thing that I downloaded didn't come with any floppy images. So let's just try to just press Control-Delete with the CD in here. So we'll press Control-Delete right now. Okay, so we're at loading, please wait once again. And let's see if it, okay, here we go. So this is a lot different. So right now it says insert the OS2 warp CD-ROM into the CD-ROM drive and press enter. So let me go ahead and grab that. And it is now loading requested files. Welcome! Congratulations on your purchase of IBM OS2 warp version 4. OS2 warp version 4 contains the following powerful components and services: file and print sharing services, Netscape communicator, let's go. Tavali management agent, TCP services, and Java virtual machine. The following panels will guide you through the installation of the OS2 Warp operating system and the networking services that you select. OS2 Warp Operating System 2 version 4 Operating System 2 references throughout these programs refer to OS2 Warp version 4 operating system product, which is included in OS2 Warp plus IBM and other. Okay, so we'll just press enter. Thank you, IBM, for that wonderful, super detailed explanation of how many names that you use to refer to your operating system. Man, it's like just defining things. The term hard disk refers to a physical drive. A partition is a physical segment of a hard disk. So it kind of like defines the terms hard disk and partition if you didn't know what those were. And yeah, OS2 is in some ways very similar to Windows in the sense that it uses kind of the same file structure. It uses like the C drive, it uses very similar file types. It, you know, uses exe files, bat files. So if you've never used OS2 before, you're going to see some similarities to Windows, at least in kind of the way that the OS file system is structured, but that also is because this was partially developed by Microsoft. This version wasn't. This was an IBM exclusive version, but so OS2 recommends that we use the high performance file system, which actually was developed partially by Microsoft. So yeah, it's called HPFS, and it's basically a you know, improvement of the previous FAT file system. So we're just going to use that. And volume may contain data. You chose to format a volume that may have data. Yes, we know that. So we're going to press enter to format the volume and continue the installation process. So yeah, we are definitely getting much farther than we previously did. But you can see this is kind of what I was talking about before. You see down here where it says copying files, C, OS2, DLL. There's sys files, DLL files. There's a lot of similarities to Windows, like I said, in the structure and certain file types that are used in the file system. Checking your workstation's configuration. Okay, so right here is where we want to enter in our, this is actually very nice. This is like very very graphical here. So it's got your system configuration, it's got your, you know, locale, so it's kind of figured out that we're in the US and we have the US keyboard layout. You know, because this is obviously, you know, this version was released in the US. So the mouse, we have a PS2, you know, we have this HP mouse, which is, you know, much newer than this system itself. So we're just going to go with the, you know, generic PS2 mouse. SVGA display. All right, so for all of the components that it, you know, wants us to actually select here, we're just going to do everything except the printer utilities, because, you know, we don't really have any of that hooked up. I do want to go under tools and games and see, because yeah, see, there's some things that it's not going to have installed. So we're going to get this 3D graphics library and the optional bitmaps. You can see under available here, I think it's actually formatted this as a 2 gig drive. And now it's going to ask us for our name. We're going to put in, oh, let's do Michael MJD. Department, I mean, I don't really have a department. We'll just say YouTube company MJD, why not? and select services to install. Let's get everything here as well. You see we got Netscape communicator. Yeah, now it should actually start the, yeah, so now it's actually going to copy the operating system files. All right, so now we have kind of a screen where it's going to give you some blurbs about, you know, IBM and OS2. So you see right here, it says IBM means three things: providing global solutions for a small planet, creating and applying advanced technologies to improve the effectiveness and efficiency with which consumers run their businesses, constantly improving customer satisfaction with products and services we provide. Thank you for your continued support of IBM and OS2. And it's got this nice little graphic over here. So this is kind of similar to kind of like what, well, I think a lot of versions of Windows did this. I mean, Windows XP comes to mind for me, but you know, Windows 98 and Windows ME did this. You know, while it was installing stuff, it would kind of show you, so you know, just in very, you know, brief, like little text blurbs here, it would kind of tell you some of like the new features in whatever Windows release that it was. This one here is actually kind of telling you some stuff about IBM in general, like kind of, you know, what they stand for, I guess. So right now the system is rebooting, so it has finished up. That is definitely a good sign, so we're just going to let it restart, and it should boot up from the hard drive. Alright, so it actually has to go through the final stages, it looks like, of the setup here. So wow, that is going insanely fast at the bottom there. So I guess I'm just going to let it finish this up here. All right, so here we are. The setup looks to have finished. We actually have this window that came up that is asking us if we want to install additional options. So we can get things like Java 1.3, the Java 1.1.8 toolkit, the OS2 toolkit. So while this is installing, I just kind of want to touch briefly on OS2's interface. You guys can probably see that the general layout of it looks, you know, very similar to Windows. You've got icons here on your desktop. You have a sort of taskbar down here. You have this OS2 menu, which is, you know, not exactly like the Windows Start menu, but it does have some, you know, similarities. But then OS2 also kind of takes it a step further and includes almost like some little widgets down here. One of them is this very cool, you know, space monitor for your hard drive, and it literally shows you a live, I mean, you can see like this number is going down as I am installing stuff up here. It actually shows you the amount of space that's free on your hard disk, like right on your desktop. And it tells you what drive that is actually reading from, which is the C drive, which is an HPFS volume. You can also click on this to kind of change it over to, now this looks like it's a battery monitor. So if you were using this on like a laptop, you know, this is where it would show you your battery charge. Right now it's, you know, this is obviously not a laptop, so there's no battery in it. And then if we click it once again, you can see that this here is your system, you know, very similar to like if you go into Task Manager and go, you know, under Performance, you know, where it's going to show you those, you know, graphs of your CPU usage. This is that right here. This is your, you know, system resource monitor basically. And if we click it again, we're back to the, you know, disk space monitor. So going from, you know, starting at this icon right here, this is kind of your application, you know, switcher basically. This shows you all of the applications that are open on your system. So there's like this desktop button right here. This is actually going to take you back to the desktop. So if I had, for example, if I open up this OS2 system, what I can do is then go to this icon at desktop, and it will, you know, take all the windows off the screen. And then I can go back in here, I can hit OS2 system, and you know, now it's going to show back up. So this is kind of your way of switching between applications and also viewing and minimize applications, which I'll show you guys in a minute how that works. Next to that is actually a feature that allows you to lock your system. That little lock right there, what I can do is put in a password. I'll put in MJD, and you see it doesn't actually show up, and we'll just hit OK. And now it's actually going to lock the system out, and you can see that there's actually no text box or anything like that. Let me just go ahead and kind of resize the camera here. There's no text box or anything. What you have to do is actually just type in your password on, you know, on this blank screen and press enter, and it will, you know, log you back in. What I could do is if I type in the wrong password and I press enter, it will, you know, show up and say you typed an incorrect password, try again. So that is kind of a very easy way, kind of if you're working on like a, you know, sensitive document or something, and you know, someone walks by, you don't want them to see it, you can just press that, and now that it's got my, you know, password saved, it'll instantly lock, you know, just like that. So I can go ahead and log back in here, and there you go. Moving on, this next option is actually your search option, where you can find objects. So if I wanted to, for example, find all exe files on the system, I can press OK, and now it's actually going to go through and start finding exe files. Next to that is actually your shutdown option. You can press this. It's a little computer icon with an X on it, and that is actually indicating to you that this is the shutdown button. So when you press that, it'll ask you right here, are you sure you want to shut down the system? We're just going to say no because we don't want to shut it down at the moment. Next to that, you actually have your tray switcher, where you can actually make multiple different system trays basically. I have 2 of them right now. So right now this is tray 1. I can also switch to tray 2, which I made, and now you can see that everything to the right of this icon has disappeared. So you can actually kind of customize this the way that you want to, but this is just kind of what comes by default on this system tray here. Next to that are your drives. When you actually click on this, it will show you a list of all of the drives that it was able to find on the system. But you can see that some of these, like for example, I don't have a drive B. Drive D is going to be your CD-ROM. Drive A is going to be the one floppy disk that I have. So it's, you know, probably, I mean, I don't have a drive B, which is, you know, probably just there as like a placeholder thing. Yeah, there's literally no drive B on the system at all. Next to that is your printers, which of course I don't have. Then you have your volume control, which we just took a look at earlier. And next to that is called system setup. It's very similar to the Windows control panel. You basically have a list of all of your options that you can modify. And finally, next to that is your command prompts. You have a list of different command prompts that you can do here. So you can start DOS from drive A, you can start DOS full screen, DOS in a window, you can start OS2 full screen or in a window, and then you can also run WinOS2, which is basically a subsystem, essentially, version of Windows. If I launch this here, it will literally launch a version of the, you know, this right here is like Windows 3.1. I can go to About Program Manager, you can see it says IBM WinOS2 Program Manager version 3.1. So this is again one of those features that I was talking about where there was a lot of you know, development from Microsoft as well, where they literally in some ways bundled basically like a Windows subsystem in OS2 here, because this is literally, you know, like this is Windows 3.1. I mean, it's got all of the same programs, but it's just kind of running like on top of OS2 here. You can tell it's a completely different interface. Like this is your Windows 3.1 interface. And if I open up an OS2 window right here, here's an OS2 window. You can see it's a completely different interface. So it's actually very interesting. And when I first saw this, I thought this was just really bizarre, but it was so interesting because, I mean, this is something that essentially ended up competing with Windows, but it had like literally a like mini version of Windows in it, and that's kind of what you know, one of the slogans that IBM had for OS2 is it's a better DOS than DOS, and it's a better Windows than Windows, because it had both compatibility with DOS and Windows programs. So yeah, basically if you had OS2 back in the day, it would be very convenient for you to run not only OS2 applications, but also MS-DOS and Windows applications all on this one system. So that was definitely one of the very, very awesome features of OS2 if you actually had it. But do you guys know what isn't convenience? Managing passwords. Yes, it is something that we all have to do, even if we don't like it. And it's very important to, you know, use multiple unique passwords on all of the websites that you use. It's something that we've all heard before. Some of us just, you know, disregard. Some of us, you know, put it off and say we're going to do it later. But if you want to improve your online security today, right now, and also, you know, do it in a very easy and convenient way, you might want to check out this video's sponsor, Dashlane. Dashlane is the secure password manager and digital wallet designed to make your online life easier. Have you ever tried to log into a website and just couldn't remember what your password was? Maybe it's one of those sites that you don't use very often, so you have to go through the password recovery process, or maybe you just try a few of your most used passwords and end up getting locked out of your account temporarily. Yeah, it's happened to all of us. Managing passwords on all of your online accounts can be a huge hassle, but this is where Dashlane comes in. Instead of coming up with unique passwords yourself, Dashlane can do it for you. It keeps all of your passwords stored in a secure vault that only you have access to with a single master password. It can also generate secure passwords for you right from your web browser and autofill in form data like addresses and credit card numbers. This allows you to breeze through sign-up forms and log into all of your accounts with just one click. You can download Dashlane for free on Windows, macOS, Linux, Android, or iOS. So what are you waiting for? Go ahead and download Dashlane for free on your first device by following the link down below, and you'll automatically get a free 30-day trial of their premium service. The best part? There's no credit card required at sign up. So yeah, moving on here, I do want to kind of talk about some of these icons on the desktop right here, and we're going to start with the OS2 system. This is very similar, actually, in a lot of ways to like the Windows 3.1 Program Manager, because in here you can launch things like, you have your toolbar right here. That is actually a whole nother like interface that you can open up to have some more shortcuts to things. And what's also pretty neat about OS2 is that by default, it actually leaves all of the windows that you had opened up. Like I had this, volume window opened up, like when I shut down. So that is actually very neat, is it will try to actually keep all of your windows that you had running, even if they were in the background, like that, volume thing was actually minimized. And that is something else that I want to talk about as well, is in OS2, you don't really minimize things to the taskbar in the sense that we think that you do with Windows. Obviously, this isn't Windows. It's, got some similarities to Windows, but it also has some differences. And one of those is kind of how it manages actual windows. Like if I open up this OS2 system window here, and this is what I also want to talk about, is the design of these three buttons over here. You can see that they are not as distinct as they are in Windows. They still have the three same buttons up here: close, maximize, and minimize. I don't think they're really called, so this right here is the close button, this little square with the line through it. That's actually going to close out of it. The one next to that is actually going to minimize it, but instead of actually minimizing to the taskbar like in Windows, it actually minimizes down to this icon right here, basically. So it kind of saves that window state and puts it back in the icon. So now if I were to double click on this, I can open it back up. You could also go to your application switcher down here and see all of your open applications, and you see that one of those is OS2 system. So instead of kind of having all of your like minimized applications spread out across the taskbar here, they're all contained in this little window switcher here. Now, if I were to hit this button over here, well, this one, let me just show you that, will actually maximize it, okay? And then now it changes to a minimize or to a restore button. Now, if I were to close out of this, now if I go down here, you can see that it's no longer in here, and there's also not that line pattern over the icon. So kind of saying that there's no active windows from this application. One thing I also want to show off is Netscape Communicator. So we're gonna go ahead and just hit next here. We're gonna put in our name. We don't have an email address, or that, there's no point in putting one in. We'll just use the default profile, why not? And so Netscape Communicator, I believe, is kind of an all-in-one application. So not only does it have a version of Netscape Navigator, which is the web browser, but it also has a mail application as well. It's got news groups, Netscape news group, an address book, and a composer right here, which I believe is just going to, so this is just a sample, text editor. So yeah, so that's what Netscape Communicator is. Obviously, this isn't actually going to load here, but we can go to About Communicator and see what version this is. So this is version 4.61 for OS2 Warp. Copyright 1994 to 1999, Netscape Communications Corporation. So that is pretty cool. It's obviously got some IBM branding as well, since this was a version created for OS2. So yeah, if you've used Netscape Navigator before, this is pretty much the same interface. It's just running under OS2, and it's also got some of these other Netscape applications in here as well, which is definitely very, very nice. Now again, I can close out of this window right here, and I can kind of, well, that's actually going to close Netscape, Communicator there. But if I wanted to keep it running in the background, what I could do is, instead of closing out of it, I could hit this button right here and actually minimize it. And you can see it's actually still going to keep this little Netscape toolbar up here, which is actually very useful if you wanted to just be on your desktop, kind of, doing some work, maybe typing something in like a Word document. And then if you want to get quick access to your email, you can just boom, hit it right there, and your email is going to pop up. Just kind of imagine this actually loaded a proper email inbox. And the same thing with a Navigator. You could just tap that there, or tap that. You could click on that, and it's actually going to open up Netscape Navigator. So definitely very, very nice. Also, one thing that I want to show you guys are some of the programs that are installed here. We're not going to really touch on everything. I do want to briefly touch on the games. We do have a version of Solitaire. We have Mahjong Solitaire, Klondike Solitaire, and OS2 Chess. OS2 Chess, I think I actually years ago installed OS2 in a VM and tried out the chess program. So we're going to actually be a human on this side, and on the other side we're going to be a computer. You can change the difficulty of the computer if you want to, but you can also play with two humans, which is pretty cool. So we'll actually put this guy on advanced here and hit OK. And I can, just like I can do with any other window, I can resize it, make it a little bit larger. This version of chess, I believe, is played by clicking on the piece that you want to move and then clicking on the tile that you want to move it to. So yeah, this is chess running under OS2. So we'll go ahead and actually just minimize that. I do also want to touch on, let's go under programs here in games. Klondike Solitaire, this is a version of Solitaire that was created, I think this was actually made by IBM as well. Yeah, Klondike Solitaire. So yeah, there are a lot of programs that I said are kind of developed by IBM, but there's also, like I kind of mentioned down here, there's kind of this entire Windows subsystem. What you could also do is run like WinOS2 in full screen. So if you wanted to literally kind of use the Windows interface, if you were more used to that, you could completely switch to this interface. This is definitely like more what I'm used to. I haven't really used OS2 a whole lot, but now you have this icon down here for your OS2 desktop, and if you kind of restore that, it will actually switch you back to your OS2 desktop. So it's actually very, very cool, and I just think it's very unique that you literally have like a Windows 3.1 subsystem. And yeah, it is just kind of cool to see. Like I said, when I first heard about OS2 and kind of tried it out, I thought this was really bizarre, because I was like, this is so weird, because this is kind of in many ways a competitor to Windows, but it had a built-in version of Windows. But one of the interesting things is you can see that like this was released in 1996, right? But it still has like a Windows 3.1 subsystem, even though that was released in 1992. And that was because that it was around the time that Microsoft released Windows 3.1 that they split off and stopped developing OS2 with IBM. So there wasn't going to be, so like IBM didn't get the chance to work with Microsoft on kind of integrating a newer version of Windows into OS2. Microsoft wanted to kind of go their own way and ended up being a lot more successful, as we all know. Again, that is a story though for another time. I'm kind of just briefly touching on it here. But overall, guys, that is an in-depth look at OS2 Warp version 4.5.1 running on the $5 Windows 98 PC. Guys, if you enjoyed this video, definitely sure to give it a thumbs up. Be sure to get subscribed down below and turn on those channel notifications if you haven't already to get notified whenever that I upload a new video, which I do every single week on this channel. And if you guys have any video suggestions or any just general comments about what you guys saw today, if you guys have any more videos that you would like me to do relating to OS2 or the $5 98 PC, be sure to leave those down below, as I always enjoy reading what you guys have to say, and your comments and feedback definitely do help in me making future videos for you guys. But as always, guys, I'm gonna go ahead and sign out. So I just want to thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.